Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, today is a celebration. We just hit over 1 million downloads, 5 million social media impressions, all because of you. Thank you for VM Nation for showing up every day. Guys, this is going to be a great episode. My friend's going to come on. We're going to be talking about his brand new book, which I've read now 3 times. It was the only book I bought on vacation with me, and I got some photos I'll share later. But we're going to talk about how to, if you're feeling down, it's time to look up. And if you stay and listen to this episode till the last 2 minutes, it is possibly eternity changing. So, guys, I love you, and just hang out with us. It's going to be fun. I want to thank our sponsors, Andrea and Ernie from ENA's Friendly Service. If you want your car fixed the first time, done right, check them out down below, and I'll get that information to you if you're in Bergen County and New Jersey. So my brother Mike, I love your book. Like I said, I've read it I'm on my 3rd iteration right now. I'm writing it down and I'm marking it up. So it's all beat up now, kind of like my Bible. It's getting all beat up and hammered on. So welcome to the show, brother. How are you doing today?
I am fine, Richard. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show and talk to your listeners. It's an honor for me. I'm humbled.
I love it. And by 2 people I want to thank, I want to thank Cynthia, and I also want to thank Ira, Mark Smith for hooking us up and getting us together. So, brother, my first question is, what is your definition of resiliency?
Resiliency is the ability to know when you need help, I suppose would be part of it. But it's also the ability, once you know you need help, to accept it and to come back. Your listeners can find me sometime, hopefully later this month, on Cynthia Concordia's podcast. And she asked me what one of the hardest lessons I had to learn in life was. I spent a lot of time, Richard, thinking I could do life on my own, thinking I could do Christianity on my own. And one place I pointed her to was Ecclesiastes, where it says, if 2 people are walking and one falls down, nobody can help them up. And then on the other side of that, a 3-corded chain is hard to be broken. And then I also pointed her to Jesus when he sent his disciples out. He sent them out 2 by 2. Now, I'll make a small joke that somebody else has made before me. Imagine being 2 by 2, and Jesus sends you out, and he sends you out with Judas, okay? But he still sends you out with Judas because, A, you need somebody, and Judas needed somebody. But that resiliency of knowing that you're going to fall, and you're going to need help, and being humble enough to say, I need help. But that resiliency also of saying, I'm going to get back up. I think it's a Japanese proverb. I may have the wrong ethnicity, but the strong man falls down 7 times but rises 8. It's that kind of, I'm not staying down. There's something in me. There's a calling in me. As a Christian, I believe it's a God-placed calling that says, I'm not down. I'm not called to stay down. I'm called to rise. And that's what my definition of resiliency is.
All right. So, me and you have a lot in common. We both love Nikki Cruz. We both love Striper. We both love God, and we're both brothers in the faith. But we also have something else in common. We both been clean and sober a long time, a
Yes,
very
sir.
long time. But as you were telling me before we even get on the show, take us back to that day where you reached out and said, God, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So take us back to that day. And was it 1986 or 1987?
So yeah, let me step back a little bit before, because I think this will impact your listeners a little bit. I won't get into a whole lot of the details, but I had come out of a Christian high school where some really bad stuff happened. And so basically I said, if this is what Christianity is about, I need to have more fun as a Christian. And so I walked away from the Lord. I've done quite a bit of Bible study, and I don't think the Lord ever turns his back on his people. I won't get into that here, but I encourage your listeners to do the study. I think what happens is we turn our back on the Lord. And so I had done that, and I found myself in San Antonio, and New Year's Eve of 1986, after having dental surgery, I was 5'11", 110 pounds. So I'm about 5'10". They say I shrunk an inch over the last 46 years or 36 years or so. And I'm about 190 pounds now. But that night I was 5'11", 110. And I had 4 wine coolers, and I took a Percocet, basically, or an oxycodone, depending on what you want to call it. And in less than the time that you and I have been live now, Richard, I consumed all of that. And I went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning. I was a little bit surprised once I looked at all 4 of the empty bottles, and I went, you know what? I don't think I should be awake. And I sure as heck shouldn't be feeling like I just woke up from a pretty decent nap. And the Lord just kind of spoke to me, and he said, what'd you do with your life? And I started trying to name all these accomplishments. And I said, well, I did this. And the Lord said, did you really? And I said, well, okay, not really. And he said, well, okay, then tell me something else you did. And I said, well, I did this. And he said, did you really? I said, no. He said, one more time, hotshot. I said, Lord, I did this. And he said, did you really? I said, no. No, Lord, I didn't. He said, who did that? I said, you did. And I haven't gotten out of my bed, Richard, except to kind of lift my head and see the dead or the empty bottles. He said, okay, kid, if you didn't do it and I did, what do you need to do? I said, I need to come back to you. I said, will you even have me? And he said, I haven't left. You did. If you'll come back, I'm waiting. I've been waiting for 3 years. I said, I would be a fool. I would be the stupidest person on the planet if I didn't come back. And long story short, I met the most amazing small little Assembly of God church, literally something more than a long football throw away from the front door of my house in Windsor Park, which is a suburb of San Antonio, Texas. They loved on me the way that Christians should love on people when they screw up, the way that you and I and our brothers and sisters should love on Christians when they screw up, Richard. They didn't know me from Adam. I could have been a serial killer. I could have been the worst person on the planet, and in some ways I was. And they put me back on track. They helped me to be resilient because I had to survive for a month in San Antonio. I had to make my way with their help. You know, that's that resilience that we were talking about, you know, several minutes ago, that enabled me to get out of San Antonio back to Colorado Springs 37 years ago, whatever it's been now. And that was the turning point. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. There's that's not hyperbole.
You know, a lot of people talk trash about Assembly of God. I love Assembly of God. That's where I first got saved. And there's nothing like, I should say, a church full of people singing praise songs a cappella. There's something like that. It gets to my soul when you have 100 or 200 people singing a cappella. It's just something that gets to me. And that's one thing I always think about. Anytime I hear, you know, Assembly of God, it always brings me back to just sitting there in church in awe of listening to a couple hundred people singing a cappella, singing songs to the Lord. You know what I mean?
I do. You know, I have learned in my years they might not all be my favorite types of worship, but as long as it's worship and you're focusing on the Lord, there's no wrong way to worship the Lord. It's when people want to make it about the people that are doing the worship and they make it about themselves that things kind of get a little bit, maybe not.
All right, so let me ask you, because a lot of times, like I said, I've been in recovery now it'll be 35 years New Year's Eve. I've seen a lot of people come, I've seen a lot of people go, and a lot of people think that relapse has to be part of your recovery. I don't believe that, because I've seen so many people that has thought, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to have one more, I'm going to go out and have, one more shot, I'm going to go out and have one more needle, and they don't come back. So talk to what, and the reason is because a lot of people, they get to the point where they're sick and tired and sick and tired, but then they go back to people, places, and things, and they don't change their lifestyle and their habits. So talk to us about, what was Mike like the day after this happened, and what habits did you do to start changing your life?
Well, let me make one thing pretty clear. I was never a hard drinker. I was never a consistent drinker. It's just that in the 4 or 5 times that I drank before then, I was a stupid drinker. But the day after, what I did was I was alone. The person I was living with in San Antonio was a fallen believer as well. So what I had to do, Richard, and I appreciate the question, is I had re-met my best friend, the Lord Jesus Christ. And I started reading and praying like never before. I carried my Bible everywhere. I was in school at the time. I had a 1.5 hour bus ride to and from class once, maybe twice a day, depending on which classes I was taking. Um, I was spending more time, and it showed in my grades, unfortunately, because of situations that were eventually going to develop. I ended up withdrawing from the college down there. But I spent more time in the Word, in the Bible, than I spent in my class, in my school books. And I was, I'm striving to get back to that time with Him that I had then. But I spent more time with the Lord then than at any time before, ever before, and that was in the Christian school. Um, the first Bible book I ever read as a 13-year-old new Christian was the book of Revelation. But as far as the changes that came over me is I I just started reading the Bible. Now it did take me about 2 months to go back to a church because of some things that happened to me as a teenager in a church. That eventually led me to that Assembly of God church down the street. But the main thing is that I said, okay, Lord, you call me back. Let's do this. And eventually you got through this thick head up here that's made out of something that makes adamantium look like toilet paper. Um, but he got through to me, but as before he did that, he was speaking to me through his word. I could read a passage. I can still do it now. I can read a passage that I read 35, 36 years ago, and I read it now, and it's like, oh, wow, never saw that before that way. It's like reading something new. It's like reading a brand new book that had just fresh off the pages. And that's been one of the changes, um, that whenever I feel down, it's looking up. You mentioned the book, so I'm just going to diverge just for a moment. Uh, Feeling down, looking up, but more than anything, it's a change of view. It's you're looking one way, and then the Lord says, "Don't look here. Look at that crap on the TV or crap on your computer. Look at what I have for you. Don't look at what's false. Don't look at what people are telling you. Look at what I'm telling you." And that's where you'll find what you need for your life.
Okay, and now something else we have in common, and I want you to tell me, because I think it's going to be a great story. When I got clean, I was 20 years old, so obviously I was too old to go to Teen Challenge. But I found a book, and it was actually a movie back in the day. Uh, it was called The Cross and the Switchblade
Yes,
with
sir.
about Nikki Cruz.
Yes,
And
sir.
for me, that book was like, for me, it was hard for me to read the Bible, but I could understand where David Wilkerson and Nikki Cruz were talking about. So for me, that actually brought me back into the fold. You have something about a photo of Nikki Cruz or something like that?
Oh man, you're gonna embarrass me. So if any of you, if you or any of your listeners are friends of The Waterboy with Adam Sandler, there's a line where Kathy Bates tells, I believe it's Henry Winkler's character. She says, "My son Bobby, he don't have the social skills." So I don't talk about places I work because I don't want anybody to have the impression that past, present, or future they sanction what I say. But I was working at a Christian organization, and Nicky Cruz, bless his heart, was escorting now. Now, for those of you that don't know Nicky Cruz is a powerful man of God. But Nicky, bless his heart, is about 5'4" tall. And on this day, Nicky Cruz was escorting the late, great Hall of Fame defensive lineman Reggie White. And Reggie White was 6'6", of 300 plus pounds on a light day. And the big dumb redneck, as I describe myself, just about anywhere I am, if I'm on the talking to anybody for more than 5 minutes. So here we are. But I wanted a picture with Reggie White. And so I had taken a picture on the run of Nicky and Reggie dashing off to Nicky's car to run over to Nicky's ministry where Reggie was going to be on Nicky's show. And I stopped Nicky and Reggie mid-stride, and I'm like, I hate to do this, y'all, but Mr. Cruz, is there any way you can take a photo of me and Mr. White? And Nicky didn't hesitate. Nicky doesn't know me from Adam, Richard. Nicky stopped and took one of me and Reggie. I have it somewhere. I meant to try and find it last night before I came on the air with y'all. I'll have to try and find it and send it to you later. But yeah, so that is my introduction to not only Nicky, but Reggie. I have the one for sure of Nicky and Reggie, I think. I have to try and find one of me and Reggie. But I don't have the social skills.
So, if you're watching this, make sure if you can. There was an old movie. It's called The Cross and the Switchblade. I think Eric Estrada played it.
Yes.
I might be wrong.
Pat
But
Boone plays David Wilkerson.
Yep, and if you have a teenager, make sure you pick up the book The Cross and the Switchblade. It'll change your life, possibly change their eternity. But I just wanted to put that out there because I think there's so many similarities, and I don't think like we're talking about God doesn't make a mistake, and He
Not
put
at
us
all.
together for a reason. So I just wanted to mention. So I wanted to mention that. So now, obviously, in your life. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say there's two parts to that. There's the Cross and the Switchblade, which is David Wilkerson's story, where he comes from a small town in Pennsylvania and goes to the streets of New York. And there's Run Baby Run, which is Nicky's side of it.
Yep, and
Run Baby Run is a little bit more raw.
Yep, and if you don't know Teen Challenge, make sure you look up Teen Challenge. They're doing amazing things, and especially in Pennsylvania. So let's talk because we're going to get real. Right now, I'm 60% blind. A lot of people would consider that a disability. I consider that a disability. And as you were telling me before you came on, you didn't exactly have a cheery upbringing where it was all unicorns and rainbows. So talk to us about how you've overcome things that you've struggled with.
So before we came on, I mentioned to Richard that I was born with a cleft lip and palate. And this is, to be honest with the listeners, it's more my thing. The Lord has helped me. As Paul says, what I've had to learn is in my weakness, God's strength is made perfect. I was born with a cleft lip and palate. And whenever I speak, my blood pressure tends to rise. Chances are right now, even though I'm not, the only face I'm seeing is Richard, chances of my blood pressure is probably around 150 to 160 over 90 to 100. And so I think that's what Richard is talking about. And so what I have to do is I have to rely on the Lord to work through the physical limitations. And you know, I spoke to somebody many years back, and I asked them, and I've held on to this. I don't have the traumatic brain injury that Richard does, and I don't have the 30 concussions that our mutual friend Mark Smith does. But I've had enough concussions that I don't remember how many concussions I've had. But I do remember this. I spoke to somebody one time who I loved to hear sing it at the Assembly of God Church in Colorado Springs. And I said, "Do you ever get nervous whenever you sing?" And she says, "I always get nervous." She says, "If I didn't get nervous, I'd be nervous." And I said, "Why is that? You have a lovely voice. Why do you get nervous?" She said, "Mike, here's the thing." She says, "If I didn't get nervous, I'd be afraid I was trying to do it under my own power. And then I'd be afraid I was getting filled up with fear." I went, "Holy cow." And when it makes so much sense now.
Well, the
And
reason why I
Richard,
asked that question is because a lot of our listeners are like myself, disabled veterans. A lot of us come home with post-traumatic stress, losing arms, losing legs, dealing with moral injury, dealing with losing somebody over there. And a lot of us, even though we come home in one piece physically, we don't come back in one piece mentally. And the reason why I wanted to ask that question because it seems to me that the people um, that I've talked to on this show now, over 1,100 interviews, we all have something that we're dealing with, but we also use that as our strength sometimes because once you've had a TBI or something or any physical or mental issues and you've come back from it, you pretty much become unstoppable because you've already been at the bottom. Now there's nothing, nothing to stop you. So do you feel that way? Because I know, how somebody can say, well, okay, you have this physical issue, who are you to go on podcasts? Who are you to be a speaker? Who are you to write in my opinion, one of the best written books that I've ever read. So, how is it that you're able to come back and do these amazing things? And I'm sure there were naysayers that said, oh, you're not going to be able to do these things. You're never going to amount to anything.
well, I have to be honest with you, Richard. I agree with him. I am nobody. Um, Apart from the Lord, I can't do anything. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Without Him, we can do nothing." But on the flip side of that, in Philippians it says, "We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us." I have my days. I told my wife when I met her, I said, "Babe, if you and I would have met in those dark days between 1984 and 1987, I said, you would have had nothing to do with me and I wouldn't have blamed you." But then God came in, and there are people who, if they come across this podcast, will say, "Holy cow, why is he on that show? Richard doesn't know who he has on that, in that chair across from him." And there are days, unfortunately, when they're still right. And it is a daily battle. And I know the people you're talking about, Richard. I come across them, they're on our street corners and they're asking for hope. They're asking for help. And sometimes, even as Christians, we're like, nope, they're going to take that money and they're going to do bad stuff with it. But here's the thing, y'all. And I'm speaking to you, whether you're a Christian, whether you're not a Christian, whether you're a millionaire, whether you're living paycheck to paycheck. When you see somebody that's asking for help, it's not your job to ask yourself what they're doing with the money. It's your job to help if you can. whether that's giving them $5, a smile, whatever it is you can provide, it's your job to do that. Because except for the grace of God, you could be that person. I came across this video, and Richard, I know that you're trying to keep this to a half an hour, so I want to be careful because I do have something like I shared with you before we went on that I want to read to your people. And I'm losing track. That's the concussion, so I apologize.
No,
I saw
I
something
do
not
it.
too long.
I do it all the time, brother. I do it. Even I'll walk in the kitchen. Forget why I even walk in the kitchen. So I get.
I saw I saw something the other day, and it struck me. It was I can't remember who it was on Instagram, and it changed how I see this veteran suicide thing. It had to be a gentleman, probably 75, 80. I don't know if he was a World War II vet, probably a Korean vet, and the man was in tears, obviously distraught. And he said, "This isn't my country anymore." He said, "This is not the country I went over and fought for and lost my friends for." And Richard, you can probably speak to this better than I can. I didn't have the chance to serve. My dad spent 23 years in the Army. My brother spent 27 years in the Army. If we had more time, I'd tell you a funny story about me trying to join the military, but this is not the time or place for it. But all that said, when I heard this gentleman tell the story and saw his tears, I went, how many of the people that are going to come up against that barrier, that literal do or die moment between now and the end of the year and after the first of the year, where they're going to have to make a decision of, do I want to be resilient? Do I want to trust the Lord? Do I want to try and find the Lord? Or do I want to check out? How many of them are doing it because this isn't the country that they fought and watched people die for? You know what I mean?
No, I get it because I know we were losing a lot of people after the whole debacle that happened with the Afghanistan pullout.
Yeah.
People were, I mean, veterans were taking their own lives because they're like, wait a minute, I just lost 8 of my buddies over in Afghanistan, and now it was all for naught. It was all for nothing, and a lot of people, like you said, started checking out. But also, I believe for me and people that I talk to, that we have to realize that, you know, well, first of all, I've realized I'm not a professional, and everybody knows I'm a ninth grade dropout, so I don't have any professional degrees, but I have over 1,100 interviews with professionals, read over 6,000 books, and I found that when an adult acts out, it's usually because of trauma from the ages of 3 and 13. And then you sometimes, not all the time, add alcohol or drugs to the mix. And then you add war to the mix, and it becomes a perfect storm. And nobody, if you haven't been in a perfect storm, can teach you how to come out of the perfect storm. And unfortunately, now I'm hearing it all the time that men are taking their own lives because other men are saying, "Hey, bro, man up, suck it up." We're supposed to be warriors. We're not supposed to talk about our problems. And I think that that's what's killing more men today than ever, because they're not doing stuff like this, like me and you just sitting down talking. And because even in the Bible, it says, I'm paraphrasing because I can't think of it right now, but they say, confess your sins to one another. But also it talks about the brotherhood. Even the disciples, they were 12, that they hung out together, they talked together, they ate bread together. So I think that's what most people are missing right now, is the camaraderie and the brotherhood when you get out of the military.
I agree with that. Like I said, I was never in it, but um, Promise Keepers came on the scene 20 or 30 years ago, whatever it was, and they talked about accountability.
Yep.
It's that whole piece of resiliency that I mentioned. It's one thing to bounce back, but if you bounce back and there's nobody to grab you, chances are you're just going to bounce. You're going to be like those old bopping bats where you'd hit it and it would bounce back, and then you'd hit it and it would just, you're just bouncing back and forth. There's no stability to it.
So, what was the impetus for you to write your amazing book?
Speaking of resiliency, I had written a book in 2004, self-published the same way this one is. That one was with a publisher that, let's just be polite and say, had issues over long term. And in 2020, when did it start? 21, I think it was, late 21. I started writing for an online magazine called Faith on Every Corner, doing an article a month for them. They liked what I had written. And my wife, Darlene, bless her heart, said, Mike, you should write another book. I said, I don't want to write another book, babe. I said, I wanted to try and revive the book, which was called Mountains of Hope Surrounding the Valley of Cancer. We took a shot at that, Richard. We wanted to bring that one back to life. We wanted to bring that back to life, and it didn't work. And that's when I said, I'm done. I said, I'm not going to write anymore. And Trail and Karen Rule at Faith on Every Corner came alongside my wife and I and said, let's do another book. I said, okay. And so I reached out to a collaborator who had been with me on the first book to help provide some photos. I reached out to my daughter, Jennifer Williams, and my grandson, Xander Herrera. Xander has one of the photos in there. You've read the book, so you know all that. But
Yep.
We are almost out of here. We as Christians are almost out of here in what Christians refer to as the rapture. We are looking up. You saw in there, I wrote Luke 21:28. When you see these things happen, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. I want people to understand at the worst of times that there is hope, no matter what you're going through. I lost 2 grandmothers and my dad in a span of 5 years before I was 12 years old. I lost my sister, one of my sisters, 7 months before or after my wife and I got married. All that said, the only thing that I can do at times is to look up and remember that Jesus is coming back. The people that we're talking about, your veteran friends, your brothers, our brothers and sisters in Christ, when there's a sudden diagnosis of cancer, when somebody leaves a spouse for another person, whenever somebody loses a job, all they have, even if things are perfect, even if somebody just comes into a promotion or somebody has a baby, we still need to look up no matter what. Or like I said earlier, we need to change direction. Society's talking about 19 trillion different genders. Sorry, there's only 2. Man and man marriage, woman and woman marriage. Sorry, that's not right. There's only one. It's man and woman, right? The stuff over in Israel, we need to change the way we're looking at things. If I tell you to come out to Phoenix from where you're at on the East Coast, and somebody says, no, Richard, I think you should head east. And I think you should drive east from where you're at, Richard. I think you can drive east from where you're at and you'll get to Phoenix. Brother, I hope you don't listen to him. You understand what I'm telling you? Because you're going to end up in the Atlantic. I wrote it because I want people to know where to look in the times of trouble. That's why I wrote it, because I know for me that whenever things are going bad, I have to change my way of thinking. Because even as a Christian for all these years, I have to change my way of thinking. And the Lord has blessed me I've been told, with a way of being able to write to encourage people. So it's a long-winded answer. I should have had my wife come in here before we started and say, Richard, he's kind of wind around a little bit before he gets to an answer sometimes. You need to be ready for that. So I apologize for not doing that
Well,
earlier.
I love it, and thank you,
That's your answer.
and thank you to your beautiful wife for even letting you spend time with us today. I'm truly humbled and grateful. But now, something that my mentor, and he's also a brother in Christ, Ed Milet, talks about, and it totally changed my whole perspective on life. You know, that my mess became my message, because once I realized that nothing happens to us, everything happens for us, and everything is a teachable moment. And everybody that was in your life, anybody that's ever hurt you, anybody that's ever been a part of your life, they've all been there to teach you lessons. And if you switch your mind from thinking, okay, nothing, everything happened to me, instead of, saying everything happened for me, once you switch that mindset, then you're like, okay, somebody passed, but because they were in my life, I learned these lessons, and I'm going to be with them again. So them passing actually is helping me in my future. So talk about that as switching the mindset of from things happening to you to things happening for you.
So I have a friend that I met the same place where I imposed myself on Brother Cruz and Brother White. And before I met my wife, we found out that my older sister was becoming very ill. And we didn't find Ruth until late in life. My mom had been married a couple of times before she married my dad. So my little sister helped find her, and a couple of miraculous events led to us finding her. But all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, I've only had her for 7 years. What the crap is going on here? And Rhonda came to me and she said, hey, hello, how many years did you not have her? And I said, a lot. She said, and how many years have you had her? I said, about 7 or 8 now. She said, focus on that, dimwit. She didn't say dimwit because Rhonda's very polite and very much a lady. It's just me being dramatic. But it's that kind of thing where you go, I think there's at least one or two in the book, Richard, where I refer to Philippians 4 through 8 and 9. Focus, Paul says, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report, whatsoever things are honest. Think on these things. My mom almost died in right before Father's Day, actually immediately after Father's Day in 1990. And I learned then, and I just found out that science has reinforced this. If you think about positivity, the good Lord made the brain this way. So this isn't just the big dumb redneck. This is science. So for all you people who want to quote follow the science, chew on this one for a minute. You cannot think on the true, the good, and the lovely, the honest, and be worried at the same time. So there you go. So I have to remind myself about that constantly. And I had memorized that verse as a teenager, but it came back to me as a teenager, so that would have been 82, 83. So the Lord brought it back to me in a new way 7 or 8 years later when I needed it most. There's that whole, you read something one day, it's like, okay, I had to memorize it for Christian school, put it aside. And the Lord says, hey, you need this. Pay attention.
And now talking about that, and something that Tony Robbins taught me, that you have your brain, God actually put it in your brain. It's called the reticular activating system. That whatever your mind searches for, it's going to find. And so if you want to change your life, change your thoughts. Like, and people say, well, I can't change my life. And I said, I can guarantee you can change your life. And if you're, especially if you're a techie, you're like, well, how do you do that? And I said, if you went through say your Facebook page, and if you did nothing for the next 30 days, but hearted everything that was positive and swiped everything that was negative, it's going to start showing you everything that's positive. Same thing with the reticular activating system in the brain. If you start looking for the positives, you're going to find it. And a lot of people say, well, that's BS. And I said, I can prove it to you. Think about the last car anybody has ever bought. You wanted that car so bad, you wanted to buy it. And as soon as you pulled it off the lot, everybody has that same car.
Yeah.
Because you were focusing on that car and your brain is now trained to look for that car. So the same thing with positives, health, happiness, love, success, whatever you search for, you're going to find. And I learned that from Tony Robbins, and he learned it from Dale Carnegie back in early 1900s, that your obsessions become your possessions, whether good or bad, right?
Makes sense.
So how do we find your book?
Before we do that, because I know you want to.
What do you got going
on
on now? What do you got going on in your future?
Well, I don't know about my future, but I wrote this. I told you about this before, and I want to be respectful of your time. So let me put this out to you, because I wrote this especially for you. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, Sergeant. My dad would kick my butt for.
This is our time. This is God's time. He's
All
doing
right.
the work.
All right. So for the readers, I told Richard that my wife wanted to put this up on Facebook, and I said, no, I said I wanted to present this to Richard's readers before she put it up on her Facebook page and before I even put it up on mine. On October the 7th, there's a gentleman, this part will be new to Richard, but there's a gentleman I follow on Facebook or Instagram, or not Instagram, crap. I do follow him on both of those, but I follow him on Telegram. It's a free, it's like Instagram, Facebook, but it's called Telegram. His name is Amir Sarfati. He's a Messianic Jew. Great testimony. Find him on YouTube to find the testimony. But I was fixing to go to bed at about midnight over here, and he sent out a 3-word message on Telegram that said, Israel at war. And I went, uh-oh. Because this dude was former IDF. He was a former deputy governor for Jericho at about 20. So this dude has seen some stuff. He's a little bit younger than we are, Richard. He just turned 50 back in October, I want to say. So anyway, I have a great heart for Israel. My wife and I were actually supposed to be in Israel about 3 weeks ago. The Lord works in different ways than we do sometimes. We ended up not going, obviously. But I've been following this thing in Israel, looking for Ezekiel 38 and 39, Isaiah 17, different prophecies that I think are not too far in the distance. Thankfully, some things are happening that makes this still, some parts of this need to happen. Not as dire as it was when I wrote this on November 17th, but let me read this so I can get you back more on track, brother. But this is what I wrote on November 17th. Bring them home. They are taken and put in fight back. They are innocent victims of attack. Please pray for their quick, safe release. Please pray for an end to war, for peace. It's time to bring them home.
I love that.
They fought in a war. They fought in a war following command. Sorry, brother. They fought in a war following command. They've been so long in the enemy's hands. Please pray for the long overdue release. Please pray they can finally find peace. It's time to bring them home. They're stolen. They are sold and abused. They're children. They're not to be misused. People pray they are found and set free. People pray they are returned to their family. It's time to bring them home. God waits as all his word comes true. One day Jesus is coming for me and for you. Jesus prays for those he holds dear, waiting for the day he's going to hear. It's time. Go. Bring them home.
And that
I,
really hits home, um, because last week, I had one of the producers and one of the movie The Sound of Freedom, and he was on this podcast last week talking about how children are being abused, not only worldwide but in this country. So,
do you
guys, if
know?
you ever want to find a deep interview, check out that interview, talking with Paul Hutchinson, talking about the sound of freedom. Now, something you said, because I believe that a lot of people, a lot of veterans, they come home physically, but they don't come home mentally. That they're
No, I
still
agree.
fighting a war. They're still fighting a war inside of themselves. And I think that poem is very apropos, that it's to bring them home, not just physically, but mentally. So thank you for writing that for us and
No,
for me
you're
personally.
you're welcome. It'll be later on this evening after I get home from work that I will put this up to you somehow. I had asked you if you knew how many POWs there were in MIAs. Um, President Biden, I believe it was September 16th or September 21st of 2021, set aside National POW MIA Day. The number apparently is about 80,000 still missing in action, 38,000 of which are recoverable. And we need to do something about that. I was fortunate as an 11-year-old that when we buried my dad, as strange as this might sound, he died of cancer, but at least I was there. I was there, and I had a body to bury. I think about the people in Israel who are burying ashes, literally. I think about the people from when you and I were younger, Richard, whose fathers didn't come home, whose moms didn't come home from Korea, or not Korea, sorry, Vietnam, and who won't come home. And I can't imagine what that would have been like. I remember seeing glimpses of just war scenes, and we need to do something to correct that. But anyway, that's
I
that.
agree, because and just the last second, a couple minutes, where I'm sitting, if I go stand on my front porch, I'm actually standing in the shadows of where the Twin Towers once stood. And over 3,000 people, including 382 first responders, perished that day. And a lot of them, they never came home and couldn't find the bodies. So I totally agree that, we need closure. And if anything, that's the main thing, is so the families can have closure. So that's something I'm definitely going to add to my prayer tonight, as I do my prayers every night before I go to bed and when I wake up in the morning. So how do we find your book? How do we support what Mike Buchanan has going on?
Well, Mark Buchanan, what he has going on is he's just trying to. Well, let me answer the book part first. It's available on Amazon. Feeling Down, look up. Um, if any of your listeners are in the Tempe, Arizona area, I'm actually doing my first and at this point only book signing in On Saturday, November the 2nd, or December the 2nd. See, I'm so out of it, I don't know what day it is. But Saturday is December the 2nd, 11 to 3 local time. Come out and say hi. I do podcasts apparently now. I've done 2. It's a little bit strange. I am very honored. I'm very humbled. All I'm trying to do, Richard, like I said, like the book says, we are heading toward the end. I just want people to come to know Jesus. I want people to not see me, but see him. I want my family to know I love them. My wife, my children, my grandchildren, my brothers and sisters, physically, blood. My new brothers like you and Mark and Cynthia. And then I just want to encourage people like you and the others to keep on keeping on, so that we can finish well.
Okay, so that's usually my last question, but I'm going to ask you one more. Like, guys, I promised you that if you stood around till the end, we were going to talk about something that can change your eternity. Now, brother, I believe that somebody once told me that if you're not close to God, you're the one that moved. He's always there for you. Yesterday,
Absolutely.
today, and tomorrow. He's the Alpha, Omega, beginning and the end. So if there's somebody out there struggling and they want a peace in their life, what can they do in the next 24 hours to get closer to him and find some peace of mind?
Richard, thank you so much for this. I cannot tell you. I want to be careful how I say this, because I know there's a lot of bad information out there. There is only one way to heaven. There is only one God. He came to earth as Jesus Christ. I was talking to somebody on Instagram just the other day. When my wife and I pray for Israel, Richard, we pray, especially now at Christmas time, we pray that they will understand that the Messiah, Jesus, has come. If you have not understood who Jesus is, in the next 24 hours, read the book of John. That's the 4th book in the New Testament. Go to Bible Gateway, search John, read John. I say Bible Gateway because it's a free website. Read John, read the NIV version, New International Version. It's a simple version to understand. And I can promise you, as sure as I can promise that Richard and I are sitting here as new brothers and new friends in the Lord, that this will happen. If you will ask Jesus to talk to you when you read that, Jesus will talk to you. You don't fix your car and take it to the mechanic and say, fix my car. You take your mechanic to the car when there's a problem. Jesus ain't waiting on you to fix yourself before you come to him. If you could fix yourself without Jesus, you wouldn't have had to die. But he did. There's a lot of stuff out there that says Jesus accepts us the way we are. And he does, but he doesn't want to leave us that way. He could have. But then that would make Jesus somebody else. That would make Jesus Muhammad or Buddha or somebody else. And that's not who he is. Jesus was God. Jesus left heaven. That's what Christmas is about. Jesus left heaven as God, came down here as Jesus, lived 30 years, and died for my sin, for Richard's sin, for everybody's sin, so that we go to heaven. So in the next 24 hours, Richard, to your question, again, I'm sorry I'm rambling you ask for 2 minutes and that may not happen. But read John, start in chapter 1, focus on 3:16. Everybody used to know John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that's Jesus, that whosoever believes in him, and that belief isn't just that, oh, I think Jesus lived, but it's, I believe that Jesus is the only way I can have salvation, that I can have forgiveness for my sin, that I can trust in him and know that he's the way to heaven, that whosoever believeth in him would not perish. That means not die, because we all die, but that death there is to be cut off from God for eternity. That's follows into that next part, but have everlasting life. That's not that you'll never die, but have life in heaven and not perish, but have everlasting life. That would be that's the difference maker. There's nothing you've done. I thank Richard for not asking me to get into all the crap that I did. But trust me, my crap would match up pretty bad or pretty good, depending on your viewpoint. I think it's most of y'all listening to this. There's nothing you can do that Jesus can't forgive. There's nothing you've done that Jesus doesn't want to forgive. All he's asking you to do is ask him to. Christmas is coming. You're going to give somebody a gift. If you reach out that gift to that other person, you extend it to them, and they don't take it from you, that ain't their gift yet. You've got, that other person has to take it. That's where Christianity is. Jesus did all the work. You just have to take it. That's your 24 hours.
And I love it. And I just had my friend, Pastor Gail was just on, and we were talking about how, even during the crucifixion, the thief looked over at Jesus and said,
yes,
just remember me.
Yes.
He wasn't baptized. He
No.
didn't speak in tongues. He didn't do 1,000 Hail Marys. He just said, Lord, remember me. So that means he had to believe in him. And Jesus said, today, my son, you will be with me in eternity. So, guys, if you think that you have to say these long, elaborate prayers, all you have to say is, Lord, forgive me. I need help. Simple.
Yes.
Done. As long as it's a heartfelt a plea to him, he's going to answer your prayers. So don't get bogged down in all the minutia. Just talk to him like I call him Daddy. I don't call him Father. I call him Dad. So in this way, I know that I have that relationship. So just say, listen, God, I'm a sinner. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. That's it. You don't have to go through all the other stuff. Because a lot of people like to complicate things. But even like I said, even on the cross, all the thief said was, please remember me. That's it. So guys, as you guys know, when I end the show, every time I say, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy. Some people like him, some people don't. I don't care. But something that I believe, I usually wear the t-shirt. I don't have it on today. It's a t-shirt says, today I decide. And I love when he talks about, we have the choice to be the victim or the victor. If you watch this show, that means you're a victor and you're no longer playing the victim role. So I love you guys. Make sure you check out his book. Like I said, I'm on my 3rd iteration. I'm writing on it. I'm marking it up, and I love it. So, brother, I'm just so grateful that we finally got a chance to hang out.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Richard. If you ever want to have me back again, if you're ever out in Phoenix, look me up. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to recommend that everybody that I know watch this, not only for me, but for all the other wonderful people you have on your podcast, sir.
I love it. So, guys, make sure you check out verticalmomentumpodcast.com. That's where you can get all the t-shirts, my #1 best-selling book, our hats, our coffee, and 100% of the proceeds go to help people struggling with PTSD and homelessness. So check out verticalmomentumpodcast.com. Mike, my brother, tell your beautiful wife, Darlene, tell your beautiful daughter I said hi. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that we finally got a chance to get together. And I hope we can build generational relationships from today on.
Let's hope so, man.
All right. God bless, brother. And guys, remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys, and I'll see you in about an hour. I have another amazing guest, and this guy, actually, young man, actually retired from a company, and he retired with $500 million cash.
Wow.
And now he's starting a Make-A-Wish Foundation to help people just like Make-A-Wish. So stay tuned for that, guys. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Have a great day. Mr. Mike, have an amazing week, brother.
You too, Richard. Thank you.